Welcome to the Cove podcast. Today I'm interviewing Maria Williford. She is a clinical herbalist, a registered nurse, and a restorative health practitioner in gastrointestinal health here in Morgan, Utah. She helps active, nature-loving people decode their unexplained symptoms to finally get the clarity they've been searching for so they can live life fully with the ones they love. She's been a nurse in the Air Force, worked in family practice and inpatient units, transformed her career when she fell in love with herbalism in 2019 and opened the Water's Edge Herbalist Clinic in 2023. Maria builds personalized herbal protocols that are matched to her clients' unique needs. She has the options for doing functional lab testing to help decode the missing pieces of your health journey to bring about lasting transformation. And she helps you learn to listen to your body, to build a foundation of health so you can keep showing up for the life you love. Maria, thank you for coming.
Yeah, you're welcome. It's great to be here.
So wonderful. I love everything you shared with me already in this. And my first question is, what got you into herbalism? Like what spiked your interest?
Oh, it's been a slow journey getting into that. When I grew up out in Oregon. I lived a life of just mostly what you think of your standard American upbringing, major just Western medicine upbringing. I didn't have anybody in my family that was into herbalism or working with plants. And the biggest thing I think where part of it starts from is when I was growing up, my parents had this huge garden.
Okay.
It was to me, it was in like half our property, but later it's probably more like a third. But still, it's a very large garden growing up, and we always loved working in that garden. And then we'd always freeze all of the produce from the garden every year. So it was a big family event doing that. But my mom focused on eating healthy and trying to feed us the best that she could with the resources that we had. And so, moving along, going into college, and then after my husband and I got married after college and we joined in with the Air Force, everywhere we moved, I always had to have some kind of a garden. Most often it was a container garden.
Okay.
Sometimes it was successful, sometimes not so much. But that piece always carried through with me. But as eventually when we had kids, life changed. Once you have kids, you kind of start noticing all the things that you can do differently or a little more naturally, or maybe you didn't like the way things were before because now there's a baby in the house. So it kind of started that transformation of an awareness of how things could change or what I could do differently. And it just kind of blossomed from there. And then when we were living in Oregon while my husband was going back to school, we were there for 3 years again. And my health some of my digestive woes that I'd had every time we moved, something different would creep up. But this time it was a gluten sensitivity that was creeping up. And I had seen a doc to kind of try and figure out what was going on. And he was like, I think this is all in your head. And
Oh, wow.
I walked out of there with like,
It's not what you want to hear.
this is not in my head. I cannot go and just choose to eat gluten and not have a lump in my throat. What are you talking about?
Right.
This is not a choice that I'm doing. There's actually a symptom of something going wrong. And around the same time as well, my son was just under 2 years old, and he started just being a terrible, terrible sleeper. And the pediatrician's like, some kids are just bad sleepers. And I'm like, he's in bed for 12 hours at night, and we're only functionally sleeping about 5 hours. That's not just a bad sleeper. And it took us going and seeing a speech therapist who then said, oh, occupational therapy can help you. And she exposed me to Qigong therapy, where we would do Qigong massage with him every night. And it transformed his sleep. And all of a sudden, he's a champion sleeper.
Wow.
And really opened my eyes from the difference between what I was doing within Western medicine, within my nursing career, to that there's so many other modalities out there that either Western medicine doesn't have the answers for, like what was going on with my health, and what other modalities were available with my son's health. And I've always kind of been this self-starter, just kind of do it on my own. I was a nurse.
Figure
It's
things out.
Figure things out on my own. And so that really kind of pushed me down that track a little bit further. And a couple years later, I'm trying to figure out where I wanted to go within my own career, whether I wanted to refocus in on nursing or do something different. And a friend said to me, well, why don't you study herbalism? And I'm like, I don't want to learn all those plants. I want to learn the plant names. That's just not me. And I kind of thought about it, and I tried an online kind of introductory herbalism program. We were getting ready to move to Montana, and I picked up this program, and I was like, well, just give it a try, see what it's all about. And I just fell in love. I couldn't get enough of it. It really spoke to me in a different way about our bodies and about how we can view our own health, and it's not just a symptom that Western medicine is focusing on. It's looking at the whole body and how everything interrelates. And it was a piece that I had never really looked at or focused on, but all of a sudden it meant so much to me. And that proceeded into a practitioner program through Sages Popham's Evolutionary Herbalism program. And then we were getting to ready to move out to Virginia. And there was an in-person class in Virginia that I could go to, which was a clinical herbalism program. And I kind of went, well, this is the only time that I'm going to have access to this program. I've got to jump in and do it. So it was a 2.5 hour drive every week to get down to the class. But
That's a commitment.
It was a commitment.
Shows how serious you were.
Yes, I was ready. I was ready to jump in. The herbs were talking to me, the plants were talking to me, and it just made so much sense to me. And so I'm so glad I did that program. I'm glad we went out to Virginia. We didn't want to go out there again. My husband didn't want to work at the Pentagon again. It was our third trip out there. But I look at, in hindsight, I'm like, that was my time. It was my time to go to school, and that's why we went out there. So I finished that program in November of 2022, and we moved out of Virginia to Utah in June of 2023. So it's brought me full circle, and I'm loving what I do. I'm loving seeing how the plants, they have this energetic base to them that we also find within our own bodies. And I love how I can match the two of those together when I'm working with a client, because unlike within Western medicine where there's a pill for every ill,
and every side effect.
Right. And adds multiple side effects. I get to balance things, and I get to look at the body and say, okay, how are you presenting, and how does these herbs support your body?
Yeah, I love that thinking of synergy, connecting things together. And you said so many wonderful things. I want to unpack a couple of those things.
Sure.
It's because they're exciting to me. When I've traditionally thought about herbs, I thought like, well, what tea am I going to drink to like relax or go to sleep?
Right.
But there's a whole world there.
Yes.
And what I heard you say that was really interesting that I'd like you to expound on is you said the plants talk to me. How does that work? How do you develop that synergetic connection to where you actually know what plant is connecting to you?
Part of it is I take a step back and I look at the person, and when I'm, whether it's for myself or I even look at, like, I'll give you an example within my own family. For myself, I generally tend to run cold. I'm always the one with the extra layers, the extra jacket, and even in warm summer days, if we're sitting around, I'd rather have a blanket on my lap. My husband and my son, who are hot bodies, they're the ones running around in shorts and T-shirts. My son, especially in the middle of the winter, is the one in shorts and T-shirts and maybe wearing a light sweatshirt, only because maybe he's doing it because mom wants him to. But it's been a great way to look at and be able to acknowledge to him and say, I understand you're a hot body, and I understand that you are more comfortable. You are more comfortable in shorts and a T-shirt. I'm a kid. I'm a kidder, Maria. I like to have a little fun. Yeah. And
dad joke expert.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I had one of those. Yeah. And I wouldn't be comfortable in that. I would be frozen. It makes me cold just looking at you in that. So when I was learning about the herbs, all of the herbs have their own individual energetics. So when I say energetics, I'm talking there's 6 different ones: hot, cold, damp, dry, tense, and relaxed.
Okay.
And we're going to find those 6 different energetics playing out in somebody's body. Some are going to be a lot more dominant than others. And so also within your plants, certain plants are going to have those certain energetics that play out within them. So we know that like ginger, for most people, they're very familiar with that. That is most people know it as warming
Right.
or heating. It's also drying.
Okay.
So somebody who has a very dry constitution themselves, if I were to give them something with some just ginger, or just turmeric, because turmeric is also warming, heating, and drying,
Okay.
they might find that their body just feels very dried out or more dried out than it was, and they'd be very uncomfortable. But then I can take something like marshmallow or marshmallow root, and I can pair those two because marshmallow root is very moistening. It creates a lot of mucilage in the liquids and in your body to help moisten those mucous membranes. And so those two play very well together, and they create a synergy to support your body. And so therefore I can look at somebody and say, all right, I would like to give you some ginger because of either some joint pains or stomach upset that you're having going on, but I can add in some marshmallow root and support the moisture on that, so I'm not drying you out too far.
So if you're meeting with a client, you're figuring out their dispositions, and then you're giving them a custom connection. Like, let's make sure we don't burn you out. Let's heal you,
Right.
and find that perfect match,
Yes.
and then let them build into their ideal health.
Correct. So, and I like when I talk about energetics, I also like to explain it in terms of our nature and the world around us. We can see it in so many different ways in the world around us. If it's a very windy day, what often do you experience when it's really windy?
You can feel chilled, or
You can feel chilled. Some people feel a little more agitated. You
Yeah.
feel a little tense because you're trying to get through that wind to get inside, and you just creates this tension in your body. And that's when I talk about tension in our bodies. It's like we're talking about the wind outside. There's a lot of movement that's occurring. Things may not stay in the same location all the time, but there's also this tension that's being created in your body because of that. So then we use different herbs like nervines to help support and relax that tension that's going on in your body. If we're talking about relaxation, then we think about like a pond or a boggy pond that is just, there's not a whole lot of movement. It's kind of got water just sitting there and sludgy, and the edges, things are kind of pouring over the edges a little bit because of all the sludge. We can also find that going on in our body. Think about when you're starting to get a cold and you're just got all that congestion up in your sinuses, and then you just got starting to get some leaking going on and drainage, and that's kind of like that relaxation state where everything is just kind of pouring out, and you're trying to support that. And then, so we talked hot and cold, we talked tense and relaxed, and we've kind of talked hot, cold, tense, relaxed. Oh no, I'm just.
It's okay. You don't have to remember everything.
What am I forgetting? Damp and dry.
Damp and dry. Yeah.
Damp and dry.
I should help you more. I'm sorry.
It's all right. I'll get to it. And then, so like, if you think about when you've got even a cold, or if you look outside, rain, or Oregon is a very damp climate. So things are very moist out there. Everything tends to grow because it's so moist. Or dry here in Utah. When we haven't had rain in a while, what happens to our ground? It starts to get cracked, and it's hard for moisture to absorb into it because things are so dry. Or a leather belt that's been sitting around for years and hasn't been moistened, and you go to bend it and it just kind of cracks. And so that's what I think about in our own body with those two energetics. With if things are really dry, your joints are going to be more unhappy and kind of getting that cracky joints.
Well, like
and
my mom said she could always feel the weather coming. Like
Mhm.
she's like, oh, my joints are so tight and oh, I'm so inflamed. And she was better than the weatherman. Like her body could pick it up.
Isn't that awesome?
Mhm. Yeah, she kind of lamented living in Utah because Utah, it was so dry, then it would go really, such a shift in temperature. When she lived in Hawaii, she had much better health.
Mm.
Like physically, she felt better. Her joints flowed better.
It was a moisture climate for her, and so she responded to that because she was always too dry here in Utah.
Yeah, I felt bad for her. She was a water person. She was always happy in the water.
Mhm.
Out of the water, not so much.
That's awesome.
So another example I thought of was a friend of mine told me his friends moved down to Costa Rica for a year, and they were there prior, and they didn't have any health experiences. They were fine, like they were great, but their friends came down and they could not feel well. They just kept feeling gross and sick all the time, and their thought was maybe the house was like moldy or something,
Could have been.
but could it also maybe be the climate was just so
Absolutely.
different than their body was
Yes.
used to? What do you
Yeah.
do to adjust if you need to adjust? Like,
Sometimes in those climates, you can also use different herbs to support your body within
Okay.
that. So one of the famous herbs that is oftentimes used in herbalism is like nettles. It's very nutrient dense, but it's also has a diuretic action and it can be very drying.
okay.
I used it all the time when I lived in Virginia, but Virginia is a very humid climate. I could drink it all the time when I was in Oregon, not a problem. But here in Utah, the smallest amount that I add into my tea, I go from being already dry to just being just cracky
Miserable.
and just miserable. I'm like, it's just one, even though it's such a nutritive and nourishing, it's an amazing plant that does so much. I know here in Utah, it's one that doesn't matter the amount of marshmallow I add in. It hasn't worked as well. And so I find other nutritive plants that aren't quite as drying and support them there.
Yeah, we are in the desert.
Yes.
Yeah. I want to ask you a selfish question. I get really dry feet. Can you target certain parts of the body, or is it the whole system when you take an herb?
It would be a whole system because when within herbalism, I look at the entire body because what's happening in one zone is oftentimes happening in a different part of your body, not just your feet.
Okay.
And so it's a very good possibility, whether it's your liver and your ability to process the oils that you're ingesting, because those oils that we're eating also support the oils on our skin.
Oh, okay.
And so that's one way, because our hydration is not only moisture, water moisture, it's oil moisture. And so we have to look at the balance between the two. And so it could be, it's number one, a very dry climate here. And your body's working overtime just to try and balance that moisture across your entire body. But it could also be the oils that you're taking in and how your body's processing them. And are they able to support those different areas of your body appropriately?
So if I were to look at that, I'd look at working on my liver,
Mm-hmm.
supporting my liver, and then my overall composition.
Yes.
'Cause I find when I go to humid climates, my skin's clean. I feel good. Energy's good. I'm like, do I need to move away from Utah at some point, or can I balance it out here? And
Yeah, you can. It just takes, you just have to take extra precautions and do extra things, whether it be marshmallow root and drinking that consistently, making sure you're taking in your healthy oils, your omega-3s, your fish oils, you're eating your healthy oils, whether it be olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, and bringing those into your diet. But also, how is your liver able to process those oils that we're taking in? Because our liver and our gallbladder, they're a great detoxifier, but they also help our body process those oils. And so if it's under stress, it may not be processing those oils very well. And so we may be taking them in, but then we're just excreting them versus using them the way that they need to be used.
so how would you help a client figure out how their liver's processing oils? Is that, or how would I know if my liver's functioning properly, or what could I do to make it better?
Yeah. So I would do when I'm working with a client, I would look at not only just your specific liver, but I'm looking at your entire digestive system. And so I'm going to back up from that question just a little bit,
That's
and
great.
we're going to talk about how our digestion works a little bit. So, our digestion, when we take food in, we are, our body needs to produce an appropriate amount of hydrochloric acid so that it can help mix with the food that we're eating to break down and break open those protein molecules into the specific amino acids. We also have other gastric juices that are released to help break that food down. If our stomach acid level doesn't get low enough, down to a pH of 1.5 to 3, then it's not going to trigger that emptying from the stomach into your small intestine, because your pyloric sphincter is going to read that pH value. And if it's not low enough, then the food's just going to end up sitting in your stomach. And oftentimes the food will then ferment. And oftentimes what people are experiencing when they're experiencing reflux, this is different from Western medicine,
Right.
the way Western medicine looks at this, but they're refluxing up that fermentation that's mixed with that higher pH value than what it should be, but the food's just not moving. And so they're feeling that stomach acid from that fermented food that's just bubbling up. Eventually, even if since that pH value isn't low enough, eventually the stomach is going to start releasing some of that food, because it's going to say it's been sitting here long enough.
It's too
I
long.
just got to get rid of it.
Right.
But it's been sitting and fermenting, creating a whole lot of different problems and inflammation within your stomach. Once it is released into your duodenum, which is at the beginning of your small intestine, that creates a signal to your liver and gallbladder to release bile acids. It sends a signal to your pancreas to release your pancreatic enzymes. But if that pH isn't low enough, it's going to be a missed signal. So they're not either going to release enough or not at all. And so then all of a sudden we have these larger food particles, because depending on how well we chewed our food, the food, we don't physically chew our food in our stomach. It's the acid and bile juices that are breaking that food down. And so it can start moving through our small intestine into our large intestine in larger particles than what our body is used to using, and we're not absorbing those essential nutrients from the food that we spent all this money to go buy, and all of a sudden we're not able to absorb it very well. So if we're not sending a good signal to your liver, then it may not be releasing the appropriate amounts of bile acids to help mix with those fats, so that our body is going to assimilate those fats and do well for us. So herbally, I would look at your stool. Not personally.
Right.
I really don't want to come over to your house and look in your toilet, but we'd have a conversation. And when I work with clients, we do get pretty in depth into what your stool looks like, and your frequency of your bowel habits, et cetera. So we have to get comfortable talking about stool. But I'm a nurse, so I've been dealing with that for a really long time. So it hasn't never bothered me much. But so we'd look at your bowel habits. We'd look at your skin and how well you're noticing the oils across your skin or dry skin. We'd also look at how you're feeling when you eat your food. Does it feel like it's sitting in your stomach? Does it feel like it's moving? Do you feel like you're more bloated or gassy after meals? Are you having a bowel movement every day? Or are you having many bowel movements every day and you just can't leave a bathroom behind? And so we're looking at all of those pieces, because the biggest thing is on prevention.
Right.
And I don't want to just treat one symptom. I want to help build that knowledge so that you have that knowledge, so that not only is the food that you're eating going to be supportive to you and building your health, but that you're not ending up with further problems down the line, because the foods that you're eating are just creating an inflammatory state. Even though they're healthy foods, they're going through your digestion. There's larger particles, and so those tight junctions along our small intestinal wall, those food that your immune system is able to sample larger food particles than what it normally is. And then all of a sudden it's like alarm bells are going off
it's
and
triggering
creating
some.
an inflammatory, a further inflammatory response because it's sampling foods that it shouldn't be.
So it might be reading those as maybe a virus or a bacteria or something that doesn't
Just
belong.
something that doesn't belong. Whether it doesn't, I wouldn't necessarily say a virus or a bacteria, but it's just saying this doesn't belong. And so now every time I see this, I'm going to set up the red flag and say, hey, immune system, attack, attack, attack.
Okay.
And that's where
creates
people get
inflammation.
some food sensitivity issues coming in. And the question is, was the food sensitivity there first, or was it the inflammatory process because of
Poor
their
digestion.
their poor digestion that created those food sensitivities? And sometimes it's like the chicken and the egg. Which one came first? But we go upstream. We work on improving your digestion upstream so that the foods are then able to be digested better downstream.
Well, what's interesting, I kind of had a similar conversation with one of my sons yesterday. He's like, Dad, every time I eat tomatoes, I just don't feel good. I think I'm allergic to tomatoes. And I said, I don't know if you really are. You might have a food sensitivity.
Right.
But how do you diagnose that? How do you and is it important to diagnose it, or should he just take tomatoes out of his diet? Like, what would you recommend?
So I would look at two things. There's two different ways we could approach this. One is we can remove it from his diet for a period of time, at a minimum about 40 days,
Okay.
because there's an inflammatory. I wouldn't necessarily say he has an allergy, but there's maybe if every time he eats tomatoes he doesn't feel good, it's creating an inflammatory response that his body's saying, for whatever reason, this doesn't feel very good in my system. We take it out of his system. We allow some of that inflammation to go down while we're using herbs to help heal and support the digestion. And then you try a reintroduction of that after 40 days. And that reintroduction, if it's just one food, is where you eat several servings of that food in one day over a course of about 2 or 3 days. And if there's no reaction that they're having, then they're free to go ahead and eat that food again.
Okay.
But if all of a sudden he starts feeling again like, oh man, I eat these tomatoes and my stomach is feeling just unhappy, then I would say at this point, the tomatoes that you are eating are creating an inflammatory process in your digestion, and it's probably best just to remove that from your diet. But we can't just say tomatoes, whole tomatoes, because tomatoes are in a lot of different things. And so you have to find all the things that tomatoes are in and pull those out, because if he's getting tomatoes that are in a sauce or in a soup, that's your body is still reading that as a tomato, and it's going to create that inflammatory response. So if you remove out your whole sliced tomatoes and your cherry tomatoes, but you're still eating ketchup and tomato sauces and soups that have tomatoes in them, you're still getting tomatoes into your diet.
So ideally, if you can figure out the chicken and the egg scenario here, and you can go upstream, heal the issue, maybe heal the stomach,
Right.
get it repaired, and then retest and
Yes.
say, all right, maybe there is an allergy or there isn't an allergy.
And it's not an allergy, because there's a difference between
sensitivity.
there's allergies, there's intolerances, and then there's food sensitivities.
But the layman, average person doesn't know that.
Right.
And I barely know that.
Yes.
Like, I'm learning it, right?
Yes.
So how do we educate the masses? Do we need to educate the masses, or is this like a 1v1? You work with each client to help them understand this?
I work with them when they come in, and we work to help them understand at that point. I think there's more information that's coming out that people are seeing on social medias, influencers, et cetera, that are talking about these differences. Whether the words that they're using are correct in the terminology, sometimes it gets intertwined a little bit. But your allergies are more going to be like your anaphylactic type responses.
Right.
That those are going to need either an antihistamine or your EpiPen to resolve the reaction. That's not necessarily, if with a food sensitivity, that's not going to change that food sampling that's going on in your intestinal tract and stop that reaction.
I think it's interesting because I know I have a gluten sensitivity. I haven't done the deep dive. I haven't worked backwards yet, which I need to meet with you and figure this out. But when I go to like places like restaurants and they'll say, I say I want like a corn tortilla, their first question is, well, is it gluten allergy? Is it gluten?
Right.
I'll be like, keep your gloves on. It's just a moderate sensitivity. I'm fine.
Mm-hmm.
But for someone else, like if they touch a little gluten, they might have a serious reaction.
Right. And that's where the difference between somebody who's celiac versus somebody who's gluten sensitive comes in. For a person who has celiac disease, if they take in any gluten, it's going to affect the cilia in the little microvilli, in their digestive tract. They literally melt away. So
Oh, wow.
those little fingers that are lining your intestinal tract that help us absorb the food and the nutrients that we're eating, when somebody who's celiac takes in gluten, those can melt away, and then they're not able to digest their food, and the food literally is just pouring. They just have a lot of loose stools, but they can also have a lot of other whole body reactions, whether it be just foggy thinking, headaches, joint pains, stomach pains. There's a whole list. And so it's really interesting how it displays from one person to the next. So they have to be very careful about any intake of gluten.
Because I've seen like people won't even shake your hand.
Right.
Like you might have gluten on your fingers.
Right. If they're super sensitive, there are some people that are so highly sensitive that any possible cross-contamination is going to cause a problem for them. And so for those individuals, like trying to eat out or trying to
That's
go
a
to somebody
nightmare.
else's house to eat is really hard, because even though I myself as well am gluten sensitive, I don't use separate cutting boards in my house for cooking. I don't use a different knife from the rest of my family. We use the same dishes, same pots and pans, same cutting boards, etc. But for somebody who's super sensitive with celiac, they may have to have a completely different set, or their entire household is just gluten-free because they can't risk that cross-contamination.
I have a brother who's in that situation with his family. He like has to eat outside. Like if he brings home something, you're eating outside, buddy. You're not bringing it in this contained zone.
Right.
How did our system get so broken? I mean, wheat used to be the staff of life. Why is it messing people's bodies up in some cases to the point where they have to be the bubble boy?
Right. I really think it comes down to our food supply. We have really changed our food supply over the years. In the 1950s, when all of a sudden, you had sliced bread that was able to last for weeks or a week on the counter, that was a huge change. We had industrialization that we started adding chemicals to our food to allow them to last longer. And all these canned foods that, we all grew up with the canned cream of mushroom soup casserole and, tuna noodle casserole every night. And
I just never liked it. Even then, it doesn't make me feel happy about home.
I ate a lot of tuna noodle casserole and chicken noodle casserole.
I did too.
Oh, it was the easy meal to make when we had sports and everybody was going 6 different directions. Mm-hmm. But we've added so many different chemicals into not only our food to allow it to be shelf stable, but the industrialization process has added more chemicals to our environment. There's been our wheat that we're eating now is now modified to have a higher gluten content, which makes it more shelf stable than it used to be. And I think that is also affecting how our bodies are working. And so, yeah, I kind of laugh when my extended family gets together. And I remember when we were kids growing up, we'd get together. My mom was one of 4 siblings, and so we'd all get together at my grandma's house, and all the aunts and uncles, all the cousins, and everybody was eating out of had the same salad. Everybody had the same thing for dinner because it didn't bother anybody.
Right. So everybody just take a scoop and go.
Yep, and move on. But now my family, we get together every summer.
Gluten-free table.
We get together in Central Oregon for our family vacation every summer, and now we have a sheet of a list for salads of who can eat what, because somebody can't have broccoli and somebody can't have cauliflower and somebody doesn't handle this or that. And when it comes to the main dish, we are having separate everything, and everybody's adding in what they can tolerate because everybody's digestion has something else going on. And my brother and I, who have the most dysfunctional digestion, we kind of laugh at each other, and we look and we're like, how did we get to this point?
Right.
Because we didn't do this when we were kids. Everybody could eat everything all the same, but now somebody can't handle spices, so they have their chicken made without spices, and somebody can't handle the gluten, and so we have a separate gluten-free noodles, or we have quinoa instead of noodles for them, or it's a salad with different toppings and 16 different dressings because nobody can handle the same thing.
Oh, man.
And it's a sign, it's frustrating to see, but I also makes me look at, if we can get back to some of our basics and get away from some of our highly processed foods, maybe we can start to heal ourselves and give ourselves a better chance of the future so we can live our life fully with the ones we love. Because isn't that what we all want to do?
Right.
Not have to worry every time we go out, am I going to have to make 16 exchanges in the one food that I'm ordering for dinner? Or am I even going to be able to eat at this restaurant that the rest of the family can eat at because I've got all these foods that I can't eat?
Well, and I think if we look at it too, this is a United States of America problem. Like, I'm sure it's everywhere
Yes.
to a degree, but it's definitely really bad here.
Yes.
I've
I
traveled
agree.
a lot, and in other countries, it's not popping up. They don't have the gluten-free menu. They don't have the celiac concerns. Even the wheat in a lot of other countries is far more edible and less
Yes.
damaging.
Right. A year ago, this past spring, we traveled to Greece, and I've been gluten-free and dairy-free since the first spring after COVID infection started. So I got COVID in that previous fall, and the next spring, my entire digestive system took a turn.
Oh, wow.
And so I went back. I had been gluten-free, and I did some charcoal and probiotic base for several treatments years before that. And looking back, I'm like, I probably was exposed to mold, because if I was able to resolve things with charcoal, I was probably a mold exposure. I don't have concrete evidence to that, but
Right.
and then all of a sudden, post-COVID, I had a different reaction to gluten that I hadn't had before. So I've been gluten-free, dairy-free, and several other things that I had to pull out of my diet. And we went over to Greece, and I was able to eat freely without concern. I could have, because over there they have a lot of goat or sheep milk cheeses.
Okay.
I could experience cheese again. It was
Oh,
glorious.
I bet that was wonderful.
It was wonderful. I was able to have sheep milk Greek yogurt for breakfast with some fruit and a little drizzle of honey. And I was like, I haven't had yogurt like this in years. We were somewhere where the only thing open was a little corner market, and the only thing we could find for breakfast that morning was some yogurt. And I was like, ooh, am I willing to try this? Well, let's see. Because it's food. I'll try it. I could be miserable and end up with reflux for the rest of our trip, or it could go okay.
Wow.
But I can't do that here.
No. And I've had similar experiences. I went to Japan and ate almost whatever I wanted. And I was like, my stomach was great. The only places that hurt me were chain restaurants in the United States. I made the mistake of eating at a couple of those.
Mm-hmm.
I think they just ship our crap over there.
Right.
So like eating the local food in a country that cares about their food and has a system that hasn't been ruined by commercial food issues.
Right.
It's like, man, I almost want to live there, but can we create that here in our own homes in our upstream battle? So going that direction, how do we do that?
We start focusing on the small farmers and the small markets and the people that are producing food for our farmers markets, because the industrialization is what's affecting our food. And so when we can go and find those smaller farms that are working to produce the food the right way, whether it be through regenerative farming, or just taking time and not pouring pesticides and
Literally pouring.
and chemicals and using artificial fertilizers on their food, we are going to be better off. And so we have to get back to looking at those small farms. But we have family farms that their kids aren't wanting to continue. And so we're entering into a phase. It's going to be hard. It's going to be hard.
Yeah, we see that. Like, there's a cattle rancher in town who's got a lot of land, a lot of cattle, and none of his kids want to do it. They're like, nah, we're doing something else.
Right.
But I think there are people who are moving that direction that would gladly jump into it if they had the land, their opportunity. Right. They might not be the ones who were farmers prior.
Right. There's a lot of people that are getting into that and are wanting to make those changes. And so it's really encouraging to see that there are lots of people out there that are trying to get that, but they may not have access or the funds for those land to be able to do what they want to do. So I think there needs to be a blending of people working together to make this happen instead of reverting to what's become industrial farming.
Oh yeah.
And not to knock on those farmers that are doing industrial farming, it's what they've been doing and had to do in order to provide the food supply. But I think that there's a better way of doing it. I'm not the one to have all of the answers in how to do that. But I think if we work together and work with those farmers that have been doing the regenerative farming and working on those organic processes, I think there's a better way that we can work to feed our communities.
Well, and take this to the herb level. Like, how important is it to have clean, well-processed herbs in our lives if we're going to be using those to help supplement and repair our body?
Yes, very important. And it kind of comes down to where I source my herbs from. I'm looking for the freshest, best herbs, because ones that are kind of looking dull in color are not going to have as high nutrient quality. And so
They're a little sad.
Yeah. And so you're spending money on these herbs and you're trying your best to support your body, but the nutrient value or the benefit of those herbs is kind of past their prime. And so that's where I look to Mountain Rose Herbs as one of my favorite places to go and order my herbs. Most of their herbs are going to be organic. They work with some smaller farmers. They do source all around the world. So there is some, environmental impact because of that. But they do list their environmental impact per herb on their website, which is really cool. But I also like to find the small herb shops around so that if I want to buy a higher quality, I can. They're not going to be as cheap. But I also know I'm supporting that smaller farmer who's spending the time that's picking by hand, and they're generally going to be a better herb as a whole all around because of the care that's taken. So on the West Coast here in Oregon, there's Oshala Farm that I order from, and then up in Idaho, there's Reverie Farm. I love their herbs. They only ship out in very small packet, about ounce size packets, and they're really not very cheap. But they're really high quality. And then back east, there's Foster Farm Botanicals in Vermont. That they also do all their farming of their own herbs. And then one of my favorites for if I'm ordering for tinctures that I'm not making myself, it's Healing Spirits Herb Farm, and they're out of New York, but they grow their herbs and then they make their tinctures out of the herbs that they have grown themselves. And they do sell some herbs, and they sell lotion, creams, salves. So it's a wonderful place as well.
So the average person might walk down the grocery store aisle and they see some kind of form of herb. Mm-hmm. What would be the disadvantage of them doing it, just buying it in their store or buying it on Amazon versus taking the time to go to a well-sourced place or working through you to get a well-sourced herb?
Yeah. Part of it comes down to the quality of the herb, how long it's been sitting in the packaging. Has it been there a short period of time, or has it been sitting on the shelf for 5 years and the potency of that herb has decreased?
For sure.
And so Locally, there's Good Earth Market. They source, it seems that they source a lot of their herbs from Star West Botanicals. They've got a wide variety, whether it's from the one down in Riverdale or the one in Layton. In Layton, they have their supply of herbs is very, very thorough. So it's great that I can have access on a short-term need.
Well, let's do a demonstration. You brought us some cool stuff.
Yes. All right, so I want to show you how to make a marshmallow infusion. It's going to be a cold water infusion, which is different from most of our other teas that we'll make. And then I'm also going to show you how I do just a regular tea infusion. So if we're going to use marshmallow for your digestion, it is very moistening. It adds extra mucus to kind of coat and soothe your digestive tract. It's also great for if somebody, especially here in Utah where our weather is so dry. And so we're going to use marshmallow just to kind of moisten all of those mucous membranes, whether it be your mouth, your eyes, your nose, your digestive tract, your urinary tract, your joints. It touches all of those areas in our skin across our body. And so if we're going to make a marshmallow infusion, we're going to take a small amount of the marshmallow root right here. I have it's a shredded root, and I'm going to add it. I'm going to make a quart-sized jar of it. So I'm not a perfect measurer. I just use my medium-sized spoon from my drawer, and I'm just going to add about 2 scoops of that to my jar. And then the simple thing is I'm just going to add cold filtered water from the fridge. And I'm just going to fill that up. I'm going to top that off, and I'm going to put this in the fridge. I'm just going to let it sit for about 4 hours or overnight. And then when I'm ready to drink, I'm going to use my a tea filter over my cup. I'm going to drink about 4 ounces at a time, and I'm going to strain that out into my cup. And then I'm just going to retop this off with a little bit more water, and I'll do that about 4 or 5 times because as a root, you can reuse them for a little while. And so you'll notice it's going to be the most mucilaginous at the beginning, but as you refill it, it's going to get a little bit thinner, but it's still going to work for you. And so I can keep this in the fridge, and I'll drink it throughout the day. I'll add it to my water bottle. My kids will drink it, and it's just wonderful, coating, soothing to the digestive tract, and it helps improve the moisture in our body. If I'm going to make a different tea, I'm going to use hot water. And I have right here, I just have a mixed digestive tea. And then when I'm going to do that, if I just want to make a cup of it, I'm going to use my tea strainer, and then I'm just going to add I'm going to add about a tablespoon scoop per 8 ounces of water. Now this mug is definitely not 8 ounces. And so I'm going to add it's probably about 12 to 16 ounces. So I'm going to go for 1.5 scoops of my tea. And then I would top that off with boiling water, generally because a lot of teas will have a aromatic component to them. While it's steeping, I'm going to cover it up. I've got a great little tea top that came from a different mug, but I reuse them on all the different things, and I'm just going to cover that up. If you don't have that, you can use a small plate, a paper towel. A paper towel is going to be a little bit more absorbent, but you're going to want to use, probably best is for a cup or another lid, and just keep that covered for the time that it's steeping. This would steep for about 15 to 20 minutes before I drink. If I wanted to make a larger volume of that same digestive tea, at nighttime before I go to bed, oftentimes I'll put it in my quart jar. So I would add 4 of my tablespoon scoops into my quart jar. I'm going to top that off with boiling water, cover it up, and then I'm going to either let it sit on the counter or I'm going to stick it in the fridge overnight to steep. And then in the morning, I can either strain the whole thing and then use that tea to drink throughout the entire day, or I can just strain just 1 cup at a time and warm that up and drink to support my digestion. And generally for your digestive teas, that is something that you're going to want to use a tea. And I really love making it a quart at a time, saves me time so that I don't have to go through this process throughout the day. But then if I'm drinking a whole quart in a day, I'm going to coat and support my digestion the whole day long. Instead of somebody that would use a tincture, it's only to give a small amount. So I generally focus on teas for digestive health.
That was an awesome demonstration, Maria. Thank you.
Yeah. I'm happy to do it.
Super cool to have fun toys in the studio and different things to play with and great education.
Yes. Thank you.
I did want to catch a couple things before we wind down. You mentioned earlier that you are trained in doing labs. How can we integrate labs into our own work and getting to know ourselves a little bit better?
Okay. So earlier, like with the example with your son with the tomatoes causing some digestive upset, I've added in doing some functional lab work. One of them is the GI map, which is stool test, which is looking at the internal picture of your stomach through all the way through your digestion. So it's going to tell us if there's any microbes, if there's an H. pylori infection going on, candida, yeast, and then it's going to also look at if there's an overgrowth of the non-beneficial bacteria, and or as well, it's also going to look at that beneficial bacteria in your digestion. So if we think of our digestion like a garden. We've got the good flowers, our good vegetables that we want to grow, and then we have those noxious weeds that sometimes grow. And so sometimes we want to keep that balance of the beneficial flowers growing and control some of those imbalanced, noxious weeds. And so we don't want to kill them all off because there's so much that we don't know yet about our microbiome, but we do know that some of those, what we call opportunistic bacteria, the bad guys, the weeds, that they can lead to things like inflammation. They decrease the mucus layer in our digestive tract, which is very important to provide that protective barrier. They can lead to things like SIBO, or contribute to diabetes, contribute to our emotional health in terms of adverse effects on our emotional health. And so it's really cool to be able to kind of see how that balance is. And then we can use herbs and other supplements to help to rebalance those things that may be not as balanced, and as well as looking at our foods that we eat, because most definitely the food that we take in is directly feeding the flowers and sometimes the weeds in our garden. And so the other test that I am trained in, which is the MRT, and it's a blood test looking directly at food sensitivities. And so in your son's case, like with, if it was just one food, we probably wouldn't run the food sensitivity test. But if somebody is having a whole lot of skin issues or a lot of digestive issues, things just aren't working right, they're feeling bloated and gassy and uncomfortable all the time, or IBS or IBD, where they've got loose stools or constipation, and your digestion is just not making you feel good. So we can look at those foods that are creating sensitivities, that is creating an inflammatory process in your digestive tract. So, and then we do a short-term elimination of those foods that you're sensitive to. So we kind of talked in your son's case about doing a 40-day elimination. If I was going to go through and do the functional lab testing with a client, we would, the lab will rate their foods that they're sensitive to on an easy green, yellow, red basis, which is really nice. But even within that, those are given a specific value. So you can have foods that are green that are very not reactive and a very low level of chance of reactivity. And then they can go up higher on the scale, closer to like a 1.9, almost a 2. And those are foods that are a higher probability of being reactive. And then your yellow foods are ones that you're definitely showing reactivity to, but not as high of a reactivity as what would be your red foods. And then so we would pull out your yellow foods for 3 months while we're doing digestive healing. And we would pull out your red foods for 6 months while we're doing that digestive healing. The goal is that after we do that digestive healing is that we bring those foods back in. The goal is not for somebody to take those foods out forever, because a lot of these foods we need, they have great fiber base to them, and we need that fiber to feed our microbiome to keep it healthy, because without a strong microbiome, we are also then going to see depression. We're going to see sleep issues. We're going to see hormonal issues. We're going to see diabetes. We're going to see heart conditions. So we have to keep feeding that microbiome through the foods that we're eating. So I don't ever want to pull something out forever. And there's a lot of people that encounter doing that through different restrictive diets. And one of those could be like a SIBO type diet, where they're following a FODMAP diet. And then people oftentimes kind of get stuck in that limited numbers of foods. But I look at it in terms of a top-down approach. SIBO is not your root cause. It's a symptom of another problem. Right. And oftentimes that problem is a lack of appropriate amounts of hydrochloric acid in your stomach to digest those foods, which is then affecting your migrating motor complex, which is in your small intestine, that kind of pushes those foods through. And so then you get an overgrowth of bacteria that was already existing around, but they're growing exponentially because things aren't moving in the flow that they want. So if we start improving and healing their digestive tract, starting with the stomach, eventually adding in some hydrochloric acid, using your bitters, which are going to bring in supporting your digestion with as well acid production, and it's going to help support the timing of the release of your pancreatic enzymes and the bile from your gallbladder and your liver. Then we can support all those pieces and circumvent like somebody that has SIBO and not directly attack and go after the SIBO, but let's tune up how your digestion is working, then reevaluate in 3 months, 4 months down the line, and maybe those SIBO symptoms completely go away. Doesn't mean that maybe in that process we're not also taking out some of those FODMAP type foods because they're creating a reaction, but we are supporting your digestion and healing that process instead of just going in where a lot of people in Western medicine go for just the kill with using antibiotics after antibiotics. And oftentimes their SIBO diagnosis is going to come back in 9 months.
Probably come back with more fury.
It may or may not, but then they're going through a course of antibiotics after a course of antibiotics, and it's affecting your entire digestive health. So I like to work holistically, work on prevention. Let's tune up your digestive tract. Let's provide some healing so that we're not stuck in this constant loop of antibiotics after antibiotics and limiting foods after limiting foods after limiting foods.
Something that I've observed just listening to you through this time is you're very good at dissecting and finding the root causes. And if I'm looking for someone to help me, I want you on my team. I want someone who's going to sniff it out and see it. And no. Let's tune this. Let's fix this. Let's correct this, and really promote a healthy system that can make it less likely to stay sick.
Right.
And to move into more of an ideal health. So if someone were to really want to fix this thing and they need the support, how can they find you?
Okay. So they can find me at my website, which is watersedge-herbalist.com. So my Instagram is...
We'll put this all in the show notes,
yes,
too. For
we'll put that in the show notes because I had to redo it 3 times just to get my page to be functional. And
social media makes it harder and harder on creators.
They really don't like me. And I'm not doing anything wrong, but they don't like me. Yeah. It's all right.
That's probably a good sign. If they're not liking you, then there's probably some reason that you're onto something there.
Right. I like looking at prevention for everybody's health. Let's make sure we're not trying to bring you back from being super sick. But if you are sick, let's find that pathway and that roadmap so that we can decode your symptoms so we can get you back to living the life that you love. Because nobody wants to have to eat separate from their family because they have a health issue or they don't want to make somebody else sick, so they're eating outside. Let's bring everybody back into the same room so we can build that community together.
Well, going back to the thought too of we don't want to just get the generic answer. Well, just you'll figure it out. It just is. It just is. It just does. Like there's a reason you don't feel well, And Western medicine, unfortunately, has become very symptom-based medicine.
Yes.
And when you dial in with herbs, to me, it's a pretty affordable option. Like regardless of all the other expenses that come when you don't have insurance backing pay,
Right.
herbs aren't that expensive. I mean, when you say something's expensive, it's really not compared to a lot of the other options out there. And when you get it dialed in, it seems like it's something that will last, that you can continue to build upon, and you'll have a solution to support your body.
Right. It's doing teas is the most economical way to support your health. When you add tinctures, which are an alcohol extraction of the herbs, those get a little more expensive just because of the cost of the alcohol. So a 1 ounce bottle generally is, and depending upon where you're purchasing it, can anywhere from $12 to $18 or $19 or $20 for a 1 ounce bottle.
But that will last someone how long?
Depends on how frequently they need to take it. If it's something where they need to take a dropper full, which is 30 drops, which is 1 milliliter, if they needed to take that 3 times a day, that's only going to last them 10 days.
Okay, so we're talking $60 a month.
So it could be 60
at max.
Right. So it totally depends on what you're doing, and that's just for a single herb. But if you were doing so, and I formulate generally not with just one herb, but still, if they were doing a multi-herb formula, that would still be like a dropper full 3 times a day. So it would still. I would go down to Natural Law Apothecary down in Salt Lake, and they will formulate for me. And so then you're getting your tincture bottle, and then with all of the mix, instead of having to buy 6 different individual tincture bottles to make your one mix, which is really nice. And then if you didn't want to drive down to Salt Lake, I have a place, when I was living out in Virginia, there was a place up in Maryland, and she will formulate for me as well. And then she ships out. And she ships very quickly. So it's really nice to have the 2 options. So for people that in their day, they just know they're not going to make it down to Natural Law, I can easily have things shipped to them.
So in my experience working with like holistic stuff, it seems like if you go down the supplement path, you're going to be carrying bottles and bottles of supplements.
Yes.
But if you lean more towards the herb path, you can dial it in so it's actually more functional in your life.
Yes. And even within the functional training that I just did recently, all of their training is based off of supplements. And they do include powdered herbs in those capsules of the supplements that they're using. And the piece within herbalism that I really love is that if we're using a tea or a tincture, that it's been extracted into the water or already extracted into the alcohol or a glycerite. It's been extracted into the glycerin that you're taking. And so your body isn't having to do the extra work to break down those powders that are in those capsules. And sometimes our digestion isn't strong enough to be able to break those pieces down. And so we need to rely upon those teas or tinctures or glycerites to be able to get those herbs into our body until we have a stronger digestion. So I love being able to combine the 2 pieces so I can optimize and support somebody's health the best so that I can get them back to living the life that they love.
Yeah, I see a huge benefit in that, and giving your body the tools it needs to be healthy and whole and practical.
Yes.
So the other thought I had too was maybe we talk about there's a cost. There's always a cost. There's a cost to not taking care of your health.
Correct.
And if you really look at it and try to understand what that really looks like, and you can look at data, there's data for days on what it costs our economy and what it costs to have so much diabetes going on and so much obesity going on. There's a massive real cost outside, but internally, the cost of feeling depressed, the cost of feeling anxious, the cost of feeling congested all the time. Oh, I have sinus infections all the time. Like the cost of feeling brain fog. Like if you really quantify that, $60 for a tincture, or even if it was $1,000, like who cares? Like if you can afford your health, then everything else can make sense.
Right.
But if you don't put priority and time and money into building your health, then you don't have much.
Right. And also within herbalism, it's also effort. You have to put the effort in. to regaining your health or to preventing your health from having complications down the line. People have gotten so used to with Western medicine of just popping a pill and continuing on their way. But when we take a look at the food that's available for us, cost is definitely an issue for people.
Right.
And especially in today's economy, being able to afford food when you have rising gas prices and inflation around everywhere, it's really hard to make those. I make those healthy choices because you want to buy the best thing for your family, and so there's this scale of evaluation of that you're trying to make. Like, I know I would really like to have those organic grass-fed meats, grass-finished meats, but I can't afford it right now. So you make the best choice that you can in the circumstances that you have, but you do your best within the means that you have to try to not use as many processed foods, so that because those choices are also affecting your digestion. All the chemicals that are in a lot of the processed foods are impacting our microbiome and are feeding the weeds instead of feeding the beneficial bacteria. And so the more we can find ways to feed that beneficial bacteria, the better. So one of the ways oftentimes that I like to talk with people to add into or think about their food in a week is, can you find 30 different things in a week to eat? Whether it be, if you're having quinoa, is it a multicolored quinoa? That's 3 different colors. If you're having peppers, are you having a red, a yellow, and a green pepper? That's 3 different things. So right there, that's 6. If you are adding spices, what are the different spices you're adding? If it's a Italian seasoning mix, there's 4 or 5 in that Italian seasoning mix instead of just using oregano. Is it a different spice mix that has, I've got a spice mix that I found years ago. I wish, Frontier still made it. They don't. But it had 30 or 40 different spices in it. It was fabulous because then your microbiome gets to sample all these different things. And then it's just like in your family, you may like eating asparagus and your kids are like, I really don't like asparagus, but I'll eat those bell peppers. And same happens within the bacteria in our microbiome. They're going to like different things. And so the more variety we can give them, the better off we are.
And we've talked a lot about microbiome today, and I think the general listener has a decent understanding of that, but maybe not understanding how important it really is. We're so much microbiome. From what I understand, we're more microbiome than we are human cell.
Yes, we are.
So if we're not thinking about taking care of our microbiome, and we're thinking about, well, I'm just taking care of my cells, my skin, my internals, like just taking care of my body, we're missing a major piece. So I like how you framed a lot of things around microbiome. Maybe you can round it in for us as, how do we switch our mindset to thinking, I'm not just feeding one here, I'm feeding trillions.
Right. So that kind of comes back to that eating the rainbow, as many different colors as you can. Now, if you're a person who hasn't eaten very many vegetables or fruits in your day, and you've been the person that has been eating the packaged meals, or you just haven't had time and you want to make those changes, you have to start slow. Because if your microbiome hasn't been used to eating the different fibers of the different colors and the different variety, all of a sudden you add in a whole lot of fiber because you're like, gung ho, I'm going to do this, and I really want, and I'm going to be all in. And then you sit down to this massive plate of broccoli and cauliflower, and you've got your side salad, and it's got all the colors in it, but you've never eaten something like that before. Your stomach's not going to be very happy with you because the beneficial flora that normally feed on that isn't ready for that yet. They're probably smaller in number, and so they can't handle that volume. And they're like, I can't digest this much. I can't eat all of this all at once. And so then the gas comes, and it makes you feel bloated, and you feel nasty, and then You may end up
I
with
can't eat beans.
you go like, well,
can't eat
I
broccoli.
can't eat broccoli and I can't eat a salad because it makes me feel so terrible. Well, you just all of a sudden just overwhelmed your system and you flooded your engine. But if you pull back and you're like, all right, so I haven't been eating this. I'm going to start with maybe a couple pieces of broccoli, or maybe you just start with one bite.
Yeah.
And you do one bite for a couple days. Or you're somebody who wants to try out fermented foods. We haven't touched on that yet. But you want to go in and you want to add in some sauerkraut or some kimchi. Please don't eat an entire bowl at once. It's going to do the same thing to you. And if you know you have a touchy digestive system, then you're going to start literally with just one forkful. Not even a forkful, maybe just a couple pieces of sauerkraut on your fork, or just one piece of the larger chunk of cabbage from the kimchi. And you're going to take just that bite that day.
So I have a question. If let's say you don't have any of that bacteria left in your stomach, can going this slow introduce it to your stomach?
You can build it slowly. And sometimes we do need to add in probiotics to support that. And if I'm going down the track working with somebody in doing the GI map and the MRT, I will always add in a probiotic at the pace that client is able to tolerate it. So if, to bring in my brother, for example, his digestion has a lot of problems, and I can't have him go straight into a probiotic because he'll be stuck in the bathroom all day long.
Okay.
There's spore biotics that I really love. And then if I'm going to start somebody with a spore biotic, we open up the capsule and you're using a small portion of that capsule every other day for a week. And then depending upon the volume, if it's my brother, I have to go even smaller, and it's going to take him 2 months to even use a whole capsule. If it's somebody else, we'll do every other day, and then we'll do once every day, and then we'll build up to the 2 capsules a day routine. Mostly because I don't want somebody to go through having digestive upset. I don't want somebody
Trying to balance them out, not ruin.
Right. Somebody
Give
may
them a
be
bad experience.
fine. One person may be totally fine starting at a whole capsule every day, and somebody else is going to be uncomfortable doing a half a capsule. And so we just have to balance that. But majority of people are going to do great starting at that half a capsule and then build up to a capsule and then build up to the 2.
So with probiotics, I've heard that a lot of them die in the stomach anyway because there's too much acid for them to set roots. Is there some validity to that, or what do you understand about that piece?
So there's going to be 2 different type within your probiotic world. There's going to be 2 different types of probiotics. You're going to have your spore biotics, which I just mentioned, and your stomach acid is not going to destroy them. It's going to be very hard to destroy them. So they're going to make it through into your large intestine unbothered, where they're going to be able to take root and help support.
These are called
Spores. Yep. And those are oftentimes what's called our keystone bacteria. Those good beneficial flowers that are your foundation for your digestive health. And then there's a lot of other, and the spore biotics are newer on the market. And then you have all of your other probiotics, which are transient probiotics, that they're only going to stay in your system as long as you're currently taking them, maybe a week after you finish taking them. And so they're going to help support that other bacterial growth, but they're not going to create a foundation for other bacteria to build on. But they can be very beneficial when you're taking them. It's just making sure you're getting a good probiotic, because there's the cheap ones that are on the market, and those most often are the ones that are going to die in your stomach when you first take them. Versus if you're going to spend the money, you better make sure you're getting a high quality probiotic that's known to make it past your stomach acid.
So when your doctor says, I'm putting on antibiotics, and they recommend, if they're a little bit more forward thinking, take some probiotics at the same time. Those are the kind you're talking about, where they just kind of support the system through that difficult stage.
Right.
But they're not necessarily going to be a long-lasting.
They're not going to set up camp and fill in spaces and last forever.
So it seems like most of the probiotic knowledge from the last 10 years or so has been on that transient style.
Yes, and it's been changing. At first, they thought that it was going to set up camp and it was going to build a structure of beneficial bacteria, and then they have found that those probiotics are not going to create a long lasting change. But they can be very beneficial, and they're finding different strains can be beneficial for different specific reasons. Some could be more beneficial for mental health, whereas different ones could be beneficial for skin health or for women's vaginal health. And so it's very interesting how they're finding that different types of different strains can target different areas to provide that support while you're working on different things.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's very fascinating, and
All new to me.
it's a wide and deep.
So when you have all these drinks popping up, sodas with probiotics in them, or all these things, they're just supposed to be helping a little bit.
They're helping. It's more of a marketing scheme.
Okay, they're not doing a whole lot.
I like to focus more on, are we bringing in your fermented foods versus the artificial, I say artificially injected into your drinks, but they're not artificial. They're not chemicals that are made, but they're adding in different probiotics. But I like going more to the root cause. How was it made?
So if you lean more towards the fermented foods, you're going to be feeding bacteria that sets up camp and builds longer lasting health, or
it's more of just supporting the terrain. Because once you stop eating the fermented foods, those probably aren't going to stay in there long term. It's very similar to your transient probiotics.
So if it's in your lifestyle routine, it's going to support the whole system.
Right.
So if someone who is deficient or his microbiome's been damaged, they need more of like the spore stuff to really establish themselves.
Right. And then we would, depending upon what their GI map looked like, some people are going to be just needing that digestive support, and they may need longer term digestive support. So we're not going to stick with just the spore-based from just one maker forever. We'll do a bottle rotation of a spore-based probiotic for one bottle, and then the next we'll add in a transient, and then we might transition on the third bottle to a different probiotic, and then circle back again to your spore-based. And so it's just adding, it's keeping the system moving. So we're not getting stuck looking just at one set of 5 strains of a spore biotic that's your keystone species.
So what I'm feeling is, going from Western medicine, you were a nurse, you got really excited about this almost hidden knowledge. Like, it's like right in front of us, but we don't really have it much in our culture. And it's really fed your desire to help yourself, help your family, and help others.
Right.
Now we need people to get in that same mindset. You said there's a certain level of motivation people need to like take those steps, to not cheat and go to McDonald's and ruin their progress. It's really, how do we get there? Let's take it there, and then maybe wrap up with anything else you want to touch on.
It takes time, and it takes determination. And it's something where somebody just has to be willing to, it's that internal dialogue that you have with yourself, that you're like, I'm really ready to make this change. I'm tired of dealing with bloating and gas and distension that I have all the time, or I can't go very far because I need a bathroom all the time, or I feel so uncomfortable because I have constipation and I just don't want to do anything, or my skin looks terrible and so I really don't want to go out in public because I have terrible acne or terrible eczema, and I feel so self-conscious about myself. I've been there with the acne, and I look back and I was like, it was all digestion based, but I didn't know how to fix it.
People don't realize that. They put so many creams on and things, but it's really in here they need to be focusing.
Right. It wasn't until I started down my herbalism journey and I started working with my liver and my digestion that my acne went away. I was 40 and I was still dealing with terrible acne. I would have bouts of where I felt like my face was falling off because the acne was so bad. And all of a sudden I finally started with the herbs, and I don't have acne issues anymore. And it's been very interesting because I spent probably since teenage years with terrible acne. And now I don't have it at all because I've done so much work with my digestion. And I want that for other people too, because I want them to feel like they can spend time with their family and their loved ones and go out and do all these fun things. But it takes putting the work in and being willing to say, I'm not going to go to McDonald's, or I'm not going to go to Taco Bell, and I'm not going to grab that freezer meal because it's only going to create an inflammatory process in my digestion I'm going to have to spend the next several weeks working to resolve.
So what I hear you saying is, when life is hard enough, don't make it harder, and maybe start to look at what you really, really want in life. And if you want to have that time with your family that's enjoyable, and you don't want to keep feeling gross, and you want to feel happy and more full of life, then lean towards those solutions that bring that your way more times than you don't.
Right. And sometimes, the hard work that you put in isn't going to be forever. Initially it's going to feel really hard because you're changing your routines, you're changing your habits. And then you find a different flow and you're like, oh, this really isn't as hard as it used to be. And maybe I don't need to, and you're not going to be needing to take herbs forever and supplements forever. The goal isn't for you to be a constant supplement popper, pill popper, or tea drinker for large volumes every day of your life. That's not the goal. The goal is to build a health basis, and then you learn what healthy feels like, what good feels like. And then when things get a little off balance, you go, oh, I have this toolkit. And my goal is to help you learn that toolkit and give you that toolkit so that you can say, oh, I know this. Okay, this is where I kind of adjusted, or we went on travel, or I had a really stressful week at work and I wasn't sleeping, and now I'm sick, or now my digestion is all screwed up. These are the things I need to focus on. But to back that up even further, our bodies can't heal if we're all still stuck in this stressed state of fight or flight. And I know we haven't gone into that today, and there's so much we could go into, and there's only so much time, but taking that priority for yourself and taking some time for your personal time, that personal healing time, that's going to create space for your body to heal. Because if we're always stuck in that rat race and always stressed and always inflamed, it's hard for your body to find that space to put into healing, because it's still managing all of that stress and all of that inflammation. And so I had an instructor say, if you had to choose between sleep and getting a workout in, choose sleep.
Most people won't, though.
No, because they're going to want that workout.
Yeah.
But that workout, if your body is already under a stressed state and it's already inflamed, may actually create more stress and inflammation in your body when your body actually just needed to sleep so it can build that recovery process, because there's so much that happens when we sleep. And that 10 p.m. to about midnight time frame is so very important to be in bed. And I know my husband's going to come back to me and say, you said 10 p.m., not 11 p.m. I was like, I know.
That's the goal, though.
It's the goal. I'm not perfect. I know I should be in bed a little earlier, but sometimes I just don't get there. But the goal is definitely getting to bed before midnight. And the more hours you can have in bed before midnight, the better.
Yeah, there's a compound effect of how much benefit your body gets.
Right. And also we look at our organs. And in traditional Chinese medicine, they have a time clock for each of our organs in our body when they are going through that kind of rest and recovery phase. And so our liver's time is from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Our gallbladder is from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m. And so that's the time when it's needing to recover and regenerate and rebuild so that it can go into our next day, because like our liver, it detoxifies a whole lot. It's working overtime for us all day long
But
with
if you're
this
pushing
toxic
through the
environment.
Netflix season, you're popping the popcorn until 1 a.m.
You're making that liver work
Yeah.
because it's all of a sudden still having to digest that popcorn that you just ate until 1 a.m. And then it doesn't get a chance to do its recovery. And so it's a little more sluggish the next day and the next day. And so you got to give it that time to recover.
Well, Maria, it's been a fantastic journey with you. I'm so grateful for this time we've had to talk about these awesome topics and get to know you a little bit better. I know for me, if I'm hiring someone, I want them to give me the tools to be empowered to go live my life. And that's one of the differences I think we see here from the medicine you've learned and you've developed versus Western medicine, where you're not telling someone you're going to be on this for life. We're going to give you the strength and tools to get you better and get you
Right.
moving in the right direction. Ultimately, that's what I look for. And I'm grateful for your time. And I hope that people who are watching and learn from you take the time to get to know you as well and understand what you have.
Well, Jared, thank you so much. I really appreciate being here and you taking the time to ask all these wonderful questions, so people get a chance to as well get to know me and what I bring to into our Morgan community.
Thanks, Maria.